Welcome to Redefine How You Age, helping women 50 and over build strength, vitality, confidence, and longevity. Hi, welcome. I'm Donna Hetrick. I'm a clinical nutritionist, a personal trainer, and a blood chemistry analyst. But most importantly, I am 66 and postmenopausal and going through all the things that you're going through. Before I jump in, I want to thank the two people who have just been so instrumental in getting me here today. One is my daughter, Jerry. I want to thank her for her expertise, her motivation, and her patience in teaching this old dog new tricks. I have some new words in my vernacular, Buzzsprout and Flowdesk. Can't remember the passwords, but they're on my laptop. I also want to thank Angie Jones, who's been a client for nearly 15 years. She's become a friend, and she is my digital diva, my graphics designer. I give her words, she gives me photos and graphics, so I really appreciate all the behind the scenes that those two have put into getting me here doing this today. So today's podcast, actually, the theme for today's podcast was the catalyst for it. I have had so many conversations and so much frustration expressed to me from women 50 and over about their changing body compositions and the fact that everything they did before that worked for them with regards to diet and nutrition is no longer working. And so that's today's topic. We're going to talk about how to change your body composition, specifically how to increase your muscle mass and decrease your body fat percentage. And to that end, we need to get into two phenomenon that are going on in your body right now, two aging phenomenons. It's happening. There's no way you can stop it. It's going on, but you can interact with it and you can certainly manage it. So we're going to deal with those. We're going to look at two lifestyle factors that must be in place in order to make this physiological change in your body. So we'll get into both of those. Thirdly, we're going to talk about one of the sex hormones that can be helpful and complementary. It's not going to do all the heavy lifting for you. You're going to have to do that, but it will support development of lean muscle, management of it, and bone density. So we'll bring that in. And lastly, one of my favorite parts is to talk about measuring and tracking. When I first started out in this business 35 years ago, we used calipers to pinch fat folds, determine body fat percentage. It was the most horrendous part of the experience in integrating a new client. And today we have these amazing smart scales and things that nobody has to touch you. You have it in the privacy of your home. Do it whenever you want to. They are amazing, fantastic, and incredibly enlightening and motivating. So we're going to cover those. So let's jump in. Let's talk about those aging phenomenons that are going on in your body. The first one you need to be aware of is called sarcopenia. Again, this is a very interesting thing for me, being in this field for 35 years. Sarcopenia for me is a term that was used for somebody that was really in end stages of life, had been sick for a long period of time, and they had lost most of their muscle mass, and we're just trying to do everything we can to regain some of that. Now, from a longevity health span point of view, all of the research is showing that sarcopenia starts at about age 35. Now, most of us at that age don't notice anything. It's a 0.5 to 1% loss of muscle strength and muscle mass and function. So most of us don't notice it. But as we go through our 40s and our 50s and we hit the 60s, that's when it becomes exponential and we see much greater impact on our body composition due to this loss of muscle mass. And at that point, we're losing maybe 2 to 3% a year, up to 8 to 10% a decade. That is meaningful and powerful loss, and it can make a big difference. The next anti-aging phenomenon that we need to look at is anabolic resistance. Now, anabolic resistance doesn't enter into the picture till around age 50. And unfortunately, it's about the same time that menopause hits. And so sometimes we blame things on the other. Anabolic resistance is fueled by loss or reduction in estradiol and changing hormones, but it's going to happen whether you are man or woman, losing estrogen, not losing estrogen. It is referring to the lack of sensitivity of your muscles to the very thing that feeds them and helps them grow, and that's amino acids from your proteins. So that's a little frustrating, isn't it? So when you look at the two of those things, you kind of start getting a picture of how the rules of the body have changed. You may have not gotten that memo, but they have. And it is why everything that you've been doing is not working the way it did before. So we need to change our strategies. All right, that brings us to the two factors that must be in place, two physiologic factors that you've got to take care of before you can change this composition around. The first one is your protein intake strategy. All right, I am saying it that way because I mean exactly that. I'm not saying get enough protein, get adequate protein. I want you to determine using a formula how much protein does your body need. Now, the formula that is most accepted is 1.2 grams of protein times, there we go, I'm looking at it, per kilogram of body weight. Now, what you don't want to do, you don't want to multiply your weight, say you weigh 150 pounds. Don't multiply it times 1.2. Go on Google and ask Google, what is my weight at 150 in kilograms? Use that number to multiply times 1.2. That gives you your low end. And then do the same thing for 1.6, and that gives you your upper end. Now, depending upon your activity level, how active of an individual you are, that is going to determine how much protein you need per day and broken up throughout the day. So if you are a sedentary individual, and when I say that word, everybody kind of looks at me like, sedentary? I'm not sedentary. Let me explain. Sedentary means that you are in a seated position a lot. And I have a lot of colleagues that sit, or clients that sit behind computers for their work for 6 to 8 hours a day. That is a sedentary lifestyle. So take that into consideration when you are determining your protein levels. If you are actively lifting weights now, if you are on the move, you're constantly doing things with exercise, that's going to put you more to the 1.6. I'm going to be honest though, for somebody that is really lifting heavy weights and really on it, you may find yourself to be at the 1.8, 2.0 some days of the week, depending on your training. This is intended to be kind of a flexible range that you can use, and meaning for you to interact with how active you are with regards to how much protein that you need. So what's happening to us is that when you are 30 years old, you could eat 20 grams of protein, could be poor quality protein. It could be a hot dog at the ballpark, and it will stimulate muscle protein synthesis. But as you go into your 50s and 60s, we need twice the amount of protein. And we also need quality, what I call tier 1 proteins, not proteins that are processed and with a lot of junk in them. And they need to be split up throughout your day. So you're not getting the protein all at once or at one big meal. And we also need strength training to be able to stimulate muscle growth. So that leads me to the next factor, and that is that we also need to have a progressive strength training or resistance training program. And this, at this point in our life, is not a negotiable. This is a non-negotiable. This is something that you must be doing. So it's not a subtle difference at all in that protein need, right? So we are now starting to get a picture of how this is changing things and why things are not working the way they are supposed to. All right, let's talk a little bit about strength training. Resistance training is something that involves any kind of exercise that really stresses your muscles, works them out. It could be resistance bands, it could be dumbbells, it could be weight at a gym, it could be calisthenics, it could be anything. It could be Qigong fitness, it could be Tai Chi. Whatever is adding some stress onto those muscles is what you want to be doing. So research is showing that 2 full body workouts a week is what is required to build and maintain muscle. So most of my clients like to do a total body workout, get it all in. If you cannot do that due to time, if your endurance is just not there, perhaps you're recuperating from some type of an illness, a hip or knee replacement, this kind of thing that we're going through at this time of our lives, then you can split it up and you can work on those body parts separately. You would just need to do 4 sessions a week instead of 2. There was a study that I recently saw. It was a small study, but it was encouraging, and it showed that 100 and some individuals were tracked over a 12-week period, and they did a full body workout in a gym using compound exercises like squatting and lunging and farmer's carry, where you carry 2 weights at each side. Those types of movements, they did that for 12 weeks, and they increased their lean muscle mass by 3 pounds. That's pretty amazing and a great result. So if you are under a time constraint, you actually can do something 1 day a week and make a difference, but you must be doing something. All right, protein quality I mentioned also makes a big difference. We need to be looking at those top tier proteins, age-old, chicken and fish and turkey, lean beef. If you're doing pork, make sure it's lean and it's pastured. Eggs and dairy if you tolerate, especially cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. Those were the proteins that we really want to focus on. All right. Now we have identified the first line of defense, all right, and that is the way to increase your protein, and how to get the formula to determine what your protein needs are. And obviously, I didn't say it, but I want you to be looking at what are you doing now, and what does your formula say that you should be doing. And if there's a gap there, making measures to get up to point on what your body needs to build muscle and maintain muscle. If you are under the perception, or you've been told that the RDA of protein is sufficient, it is not. It is basically was designed as a level to keep you from having a severe deficiency. It is not going to help you recover from a strength training program. It's not going to help you recover from a weekend with your grandchildren, which wears you out. It is not enough to do the job that we need to get done at this point to increase our muscle mass. All right, so the first line of defense then is your protein intake and your resistance training. Want to say again, the need for it to be progressive. If it's been a hot minute since you have done any weight training, resistance training, strength training, however you are familiar with it, be sure that you're starting out at a level that is kind to your body, and you are able to kind of progress and grow from that point. Do not start where you left off, particularly if it's been 10 or 15 years. You want to not injure old injuries. You don't want to aggravate any arthritic situations or any weaknesses in your body. You're going to get a better result if you start slowly and you build up. All right. I also will put a shout out to work with a personal trainer or with somebody who knows how to help you get started. And there are really a lot of apps now on your phone, on your laptop, that are for mature women, 50 and over, that you can follow along as a guideline as well. All right, let's talk about testosterone. That's the sex hormone that I mentioned earlier that can help complement your activities, your strength training activity, and adding more protein to your diet. You can't just take testosterone. It's not going to do the heavy lifting by itself. You have to make the changes in getting enough protein and getting your resistance training in a couple times a week. And then if you are low in testosterone, it can actually enhance those 2 physiological changes that you've been making. If you're not keeping up with your blood testing on that, that is something that you would want to talk to your healthcare practitioner about to get an idea. We're going to have a much more in-depth discussion on hormones in other podcasts, but I'm mentioning testosterone now because it definitely can give you a leg up and enhance your overall outcome. All right. I also wanted to wrap up today talking about measuring and tracking. I already mentioned how horrible it was to do the caliber testing. Thank goodness that is no longer the only tool that we have. There are smart scales, and I want you to look into them because I think it's something that would really benefit you on the daily basis. Not something that you have to obsess over. I weigh myself on a smart scale 3 to 4 times a week. I don't look at the numbers until a report is generated every Monday. And then I compare that week's report from last week's report. And I'm checking and seeing how am I doing on my body fat percentage? How am I doing on my muscle mass percentage? How am I doing with my muscle mass distribution? Am I really strong on my right and not so strong on my left? Is that going on in my legs as well? Though that is information that is so helpful to us in training strategies and making sure that we are strengthening all of our muscles. I noticed, for example, that one of my legs was much stronger than the other. So now I'm doing individual strength training work on that side that's weaker, so that I can build strength in it. Because when you do both legs together, one's going to compensate for that weak one. So it's just really great information that you can use. If you are stepping on a scale right now that gives you one number, and it's just going up and down, you are getting just 1/10 of the information that you need to guide you as you try to change your body composition. I use the Hume body scale. That's the one that I decided on. There's the Morpho scan, there's the in-body scan at home. If you go to a gym, most gyms offer in-body scans or other form of scanning. Sometimes it's part of your gym membership. Sometimes you have to pay a nominal fee. The deal is that you want to get your baseline and then you want to measure every 3 to 4 weeks to make sure that you are tracking and you can see what is happening. If you have a Hume scale or another smart scale at home, you can do that one every day of the week if you want to get a weekly report. Either way that you go, I think that is really important to measure and track. And it is very motivating as well and encouraging to see those things happening under the hood way before you ever see it on the outside. And I can tell you, having worked with personal training clients and nutrition clients for the past 35 years, I know there were tens, probably hundreds of cases where women were making progress, but they weren't able to see it and they gave up before they actually could see it come to fruition. So definitely encourage you to check that out. And I think in the show notes, I'm going to give you a 20% off coupon for the Hume body scale if you're interested in that. One quick word about these scales. If you're a big Googler and checking out of reviews and whatnot, one of the things that I saw when I was doing my homework to decide what scale I wanted to purchase, I saw a lot of people making negative comments about the accuracy of these bioelectric impedance scales, these smart scales, comparing them to the DEXA scans. And here's the deal. Is the DEXA scan the gold standard? Absolutely it is, but most communities do not offer DEXA scans for body composition. You get a DEXA scan for your bone density, but you can't hire go into a medical office and get a scan for your body composition. So it's not a reality for most places, and there is a 3 to 5% inaccuracy, just like when we did the fat folds with the calipers. The deal is that you want to measure yourself about the same time every day. Be consistent. Use the same tool, measure at the same time. We are looking at this for the long haul. We are not elite athletes here, I don't think. We're not people who have to worry about whether our body fat percentage is 7 or 8%. That's not what we're going for. We are just trying to determine where we are, and we're using those physiological changes of increasing your protein, and if you need to, and getting on the bandwagon with resistance training. And we want to track those and see how we're doing along the way. All right, that's what I've got for you today. Next time, we are going to jump into the weeds when it comes to protein. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, and we're going to talk a whole lot more about the science of protein. We're going to look at plant-based proteins versus animal proteins with regards to muscle building. Both can do it, but one takes a little bit more strategizing. And we're also going to talk about the amazing impact that the amino acid leucine has on muscle building. That is something we also need to be aware of. So that is next episode. I want to thank you so much for being here today with our kickoff episode. And I want to encourage you to figure out your protein formula, start tracking, and age strong and live long. Thanks for listening to the Redefine How You Age podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend or two. If you would like more information about me, Donna Hetrick, visit my website at donnaphetrick.com.